Hi everybody. Today we're going to be going over Striker Fire handguns. Awesome. We're going to be going over STI course 212. So let's get to it. So we're going to be working off the PSA dagger as our point of reference. On the left, we have a blown out 3D rendered model in a nice organized way that I'd be able to do if we lived in a universe that gravity didn't exist. And on the right, we have a large mound of parts. We're going to be going over the striker assembly. So the function of the striker assembly is to impact the primer and ignite the cartridge. It partakes in the firing step out of the cycle of operations. The critical dimensions to be notable of is going to be the length and then the shape of the tip of the striker. It's essentially going to be that bulbous shape that is common for more firing pins out there. And then spring alignment. If you have a jacked up spring, it's going to be generally forcing that firing pin, and then constant wear and tear on it's going to be able to create divots inside the slide or the striker itself, giving you those failures such as light strikes or no dent, no discharge, right? That's going to be coming from failure to properly dent those percussion caps on the base of those cartridges, so those primers are not going to be getting dense. They're not going to be doing those micro explosions, just firing off that chain reaction to where now you just have a round in the gun that is relatively dangerous. It's where points are going to be the strike face, the channel being filled with debris, dust, gunk, carbon, what have you. And then spring fatigue. It's a spring. It's going to get worn down. It's going to get tired. Each of these parts has a job during specific sets of the cycle of operations. The striker here is a good example of if it's dirty or the spring is worn, you're looking at misfires or failure fires. Now the next one, ejector and ejector housing. The function is to deflect the spent casings out of the ejection port after extraction. All right, this is going to be the thing that is going to cause that cinematic thing of the brass flying out of the gun looking all cool or whatever. All right, awesome. Obviously, since it's the ejector, it's going to be partaking in the ejection phase of the cycle of operations. Critical dimension is going to be the height and angle of the surface of the edge where the casings contact. All right, if it's not hitting where it needs to go, all it's going to be is a jam enhancer in your firearm. All right. If it experiences dents, misshaping, improper installation, you're going to be experiencing failure to eject and failure to extract because, well, that sharp little hose that sits right there on the tip is going to be slapping the brass everywhere where you don't want it to go and not where you want it to go. All right. Um, You're going to be experiencing those immediate drills such as stovepipes and backwards brass. I've seen it to where it literally just does a full 360 and tries to rechamber itself. It's like, dude, you already did your job. Go home. Um, Also, common wear. You're going to have peening and contact surfaces misalignment from hard use. All right, so make sure you're paying attention to if you have a lighter or softer material as your extractor. Don't be loading those steel case. Don't load that steel case ammunition if you can dent or scratch those parts with that metal. Now, the next is going to be the trigger assembly. All right, the function is going to be to transfer motion from the shooter's finger to the fire control group. It's going to partake in the locking, firing, and cocking phases of the cycle of operations. All right, your critical dimensions to look out for is making sure that that trigger bar is properly aligned to the connector at its proper height. If it is off, it ain't shooting. Awesome. Failure mode. Bent bar, you're going to be experiencing misfires and failures to reset. A dirty connector is going to give you that mushy or inconsistent break. It's going to be feeling like you're pulling it through butter, or if you guys run through the memes, ever trying to fire a gun in your dreams, it feels like you may as well be slapping a jug of jello. All right. Incorrect install, you're going to have a dead trigger. The trigger's not going to want to trigger, obviously. common wear, you're going to have transfer bar, which is going to have polish wear. It's going to look a lot more shiny. It's going to look a lot more scratched off. And it also gives you an eye to see where those wear and tear parts of your firearm are. And those are areas to generally look for upgrades or look for something to go around those obstacles or ways to solve those obstacles when it comes to working with your firearms. Right? Remember, friction is a thing to take a note for. All right. If the trigger assembly is, is where user input becomes ignition, the PSA Dagger is similar to a Gen 3 Glock, and precise fitting is key. Small issues can create major safety problems. All right. At the end of the day, this is where your booger hook's going to turn it into a bang switch. Pardon my slang finality. It's funny. If these parts are not properly being acknowledged inside a safe manner or a way, that there's no reason to get this far, right? So make sure you guys are doing it right and make sure you guys are doing it safe. Now, we have the striker safety, all right? This part is critical for the safety. The striker safety ensures the gun cannot fire unless the trigger is fully pressed. If it is stuck, the striker can either be blocked or moved freely, which, well, is bad. Either way, your gun's not going bang when you want it to go bang, and it's not bang, or it's going bang when you don't want it to go bang, right? These are all the things that we don't want in our firearms. So, the function prevents the striker from moving forward unless the trigger is pulled. Obviously, it takes place in the firing stage of the cycle of operations. All right? Works as a passive safety. If you guys have seen Black Hawk Down, this is my safety. That is the premise of the entire Glock safety. All right? Critical dimensions: the plunger head, channel tolerances, and spring strength. When that starts getting worn, you're going to start bumping into those moments to where you end up having to hammer on the trigger like you're Kugat the Barbarian. All right? Um, if there is a problem with it, you're going to be finding dead triggers and light strikes. All right, weak springs, unsafe discharge is a risk, and then also a common thing for that to get caught up is going to be carbon buildup. It's right above the breech. When carbon goes flying everywhere, it's going to settle in the deep and crevices. There's a giant divot inside there, so carbon's going to want to stick there. So when you're going through your cleaning, ensure the fact that you are addressing those high value areas so where carbon likes to settle. All right, awesome. Um, the next part, the slide. All right, so the slide houses the barrel, striker assembly, the extractor, and then it guides recoil action and locks into the frame during cycling. It interfaces with the slide stop lever. My apologies, it's hard to talk right now. And then locks open. Provides mounting surfaces for sights and um, serrations for manipulation. You guys see the nice little grooves on my slide? Yep, that's for your booger hooks to grab onto so it's not all slippery and all over the place. Remember, guns have oil, people sweat. It's hard to grab things that are smooth. Didn't experience cracked rails, which cause a catastrophic failure. All right, you have to remember this portion is also acknowledged as housing or a method to house those expanding gases and prevent your gun from turning into a pipe bomb. So cracks, orange striking channels, you're going to be bumping into where your striker is going to be running into those malfunctions that we spoke of earlier in the class. And then you're going to have deformed locking lugs, which is going to involve improper lockup and accuracy loss. And then not to mention you have expanded superheated gas flying in a direction that you don't want the expanding superheated gas. And then you're going to be bumping into burrs. One moment, my cat decides it wants to be a menace. Burrs in the extractor pocket. Obviously, you're going to have failures to extract. To the next slide. Avoiding component damage. All right, simple. Don't be stupid. Never over polish parts, right? You're removing material whenever you're buffing or polishing. And remember, those little bits go a long way. Maintaining correct trigger bar angle, use a non-marring tool. You don't want to put all this time into making something and then you're going to hand it to them and it's going to look like it got thrown in a washing machine filled with a bunch of hammerheads. All right. Um, Always verify the strike channel is dry. It may cause rust and damage to areas. Remember, moisture and metal are not the bestest of friends. They have had a rough past. So, when you start putting that into there, it's going to cause rust and oxidation, which may cause pitting, which then either going to degrade and then cause those areas to grow bigger. Those areas are going to have less metal. Those less metal areas are going to be weakened. And, well, at the end of the day, we're kind of controlling and housing an explosion. So, we want as much there as needs to be. All right. Improper tools or skipping inspections is how gunsmiths accidentally turn a gun into a liability. Knowing where and how to clean or polish is critical. As I always say, you'll turn your gun into a pipe bomb. Making sure that you guys are paying attention to those steps that need to be necessary. And if anything seems sketchy or you need to look over your shoulder, you probably shouldn't be doing it. Awesome. Next slide. Parts, interaction, and replacement time. Trigger bar to the connector to the striker sear. Awesome. That recoil spring is going to be dependent on the location of the barrel, which is going to go with slide timing. All right. Estimated time of replacing strikers is going to be about 10 minutes because that little spring is going to be a pain in the neck to fight with. All right. Tools needed. Well, you're going to need a punch set, plastic bench block, and then an armorer's tool. I also recommend wearing eye pro. All right, those little springs go straight for the eyes when they go anywhere. Now, cycle of operations. My goofy self did not happen to put the title there, but this is the cycle of operations. On the left, you have feeding, chambering, locking, firing, unlocking, extracting, ejecting, and then cocking. An easy way to remember it is feeding chipmunks looks fun unless eating egotistic coconuts. All right, you can play with the words. It's an easy way to remember it. If you're a part of the Revolver series, you would know or remember the little trick for open bolt and rotary cylinder firearms. Now, to functions check and test. Um, this is where you confirm everything functions safely. Dummy rounds is used to test the feeding, ejecting, and trigger engagement without risk. Awesome. All right. When you're doing that drive functions check, you're making sure that you kind of put everything where it needs to be. Those dummy rounds is primarily good for testing to make sure that everything's moving the way it needs to be. And before you pass anything off to your customers, make sure you do that live fire test. All right, because knowing your luck, they're going to be stupid. They're going to walk out that door and they're going to come back missing some nose pickers. And obviously, you're going to be the one to blame because you're the one that put it together. Accept your risk for what you want to give out. Awesome. And then that is the end of the slide. Let's hope my computer doesn't crash. It did not.